Let's turn the floor over to our first presenter. Jennifer Legal teaches at Eleanor Roosevelt High School. Go for it, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Hope that everybody's doing okay in these crazy times. I'm going to share my screen with you, if that's okay. Let me know if it works. It's nice to be back on Zoom. We're using Google Meets now, and I'm not a big fan. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Great.
Yep.
Okay, so my presentation is called Creating Community in the Virtual Spanish Classroom. As mentioned, I teach at Eleanor Roosevelt High School, and my email address is here. So if you have any questions after this, feel free to get in touch with me. This whole presentation is in the shared folder that Renee created. All right, so I decided to create a new unit with my students when we moved to remote learning. So I entitled it Juntos en Casa, Together at Home, because I thought that, since we're language teachers, this is a great opportunity to use the language to talk about what is on kids' minds right now. Language is all about communication, so I figured it might be interesting for them. But I wanted to really try to keep it positive, and I didn't know what to expect. Maybe they would be tired of talking about what movies they're watching, but it seems to be going pretty well so far, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback from my students. So my goal in designing this unit was to really incorporate the major skills that we're always using as language teachers. So in order to incorporate listening, I gathered some social media videos recognizing essential workers, talking about relationship with family and neighbors, and I've used them to check for understanding during our Google Meet sessions. I've also found a video clip where a student compares remote learning to physical school, and that provoked some discussion with my students. They have a lot to say about that. And all of this is a folder, so this Juntos en Casa title is a link, and anything I've designed you guys have access to in that folder. For reading skills, also social media like tweets or posts on Instagram, things like that can be curated to provoke discussions, as well as advice articles, like what is a good idea to think about for your nutrition in quarantine, or what are you doing to build healthy habits? These are things that I ask my students, are these things that you do? And they provoke a lot of discussion in my virtual classes. Also, interpersonal communication. It's a little bit harder now to get them to talk to each other. We have live classes on Google Meet pretty much every day, but they're only 20 minutes, and there are definitely kids in my class of 35 that barely get a chance to speak. So I've been using Google Classroom to post questions, and then I require the students to comment on one another's posts. So maybe comment on 2 other students' posts. That's your way of conversing with your classmates and showing me that you're still participating in the class. And I haven't done a project yet for this unit, but my ideas are maybe to have them create some kind of video in Spanish about how they're spending time at home, or maybe something to commemorate essential workers and make some kind of tribute video so they can practice writing and speaking skills. And here are some activities that I've been using that have been pretty successful. So I mentioned to you the questions on Google Classroom and games. So I asked my students for their feedback on this unit, and they mentioned that they're really enjoying playing games every so often. They feel competitive, and they feel like when they work together to play a game, that's a good way for them to kind of connect with their classmates. Obviously, every day can't be entertaining. We have work to do, but hopefully once in a while we can throw in something to make it lighter, especially because they are in a pretty difficult situation right now. Another tool that I really recommend is called Poll Everywhere. So you can use this to poll your students. I like to use it in my Google Meets classes, and there's a way that you can display their names. So you could ask them a question and see how everybody responds. And what I like about this is that even in a virtual classroom, you still see kids' personalities. And the funny kid in your classroom is still going to be the funny kid online. And I think that it's nice that they can still show who they are. And then finally, Flipgrid is a tool that they can use to post videos. They can comment on each other's videos. So I've enjoyed using that as well. So here's an example of a social media post, and maybe I would ask them to tell me a little bit about the main idea of this post. In Spanish, ask them, what are you doing to help out your community right now? And I find that these authentic resources are a good way to check in with them. Are they able to understand or identify keywords and provoke some discussion? This is what I mentioned when I was talking about questions on Google Classroom. So you can see that I had asked them a little bit about what they're doing to stay healthy at home. So this girl talked about what she's having for breakfast, how she likes to exercise, and other kids responded to what they do. And the grammar is not perfect, so I don't go through and correct every mistake, but I might catch some that kids are making repeatedly, and then in our next class address, hey, I noticed you guys are saying, you know, me gusta in the singular form when you should be using me gustan in the plural. So let's review, when do we do that? And that has been a good review for a lot of my students. And here's an example of poll everywhere. So I can ask a question and then students respond with their personal answer. And I get a record at the end of what every student says, so I can go back and check about who participated in the conversation. And then finally, I asked my students to give some feedback as to their thoughts about this unit and what we've been doing to kind of continue to maintain our classroom community at home. So you can read a little bit about what they thought. But I think that it's important that we use language skills to communicate and really address that things are not normal in the world. So let's not ignore that, and find ways to get everybody to participate. Even if we're only having a quick virtual meeting, it's nice to still be able to check in with everybody, and for students to be able to still see their classmates, you know, even though we're not meeting face to face anymore. So that's it from me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Yes, my pleasure.
So,
Stop sharing.
yes. So let's use, if we could, the raise hand function, and we've got a few minutes that we can take questions for Jennifer. And Carla, I see your hand is up, but because everybody's not on the same screen, if you can in the future use the raise hand function. But go ahead, Carla, and unmute yourself and give us your question.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see that function on my computer. But my question is, how do you address, or is this even a problem for you, where students use a translator to form their response, so that they're providing a more advanced response in Spanish than what you're accustomed to receiving from them?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've struggled with for years. It's not, you know, a new thing from remote learning, but I definitely find that kids are doing it more now, because we're not doing a lot of on-the-spot writing like we would do in class. Frankly, what works for me best is that I usually just say, hey, I noticed you use a lot of dictionary in this answer. This kind of sounds different from how you would speak in class. Do you need help writing this? Should we set up an extra help session? I don't know. I never want to play like gotcha on them, but at the same time, I feel like it's important that they know that you notice. So for me, what has always worked best is to just have a conversation about it. And when we're doing something live, like the poll tool, they don't have a lot of time to look up on a translator. So some might do it, but you know, maybe they learn a new word by using Google Translate. You know, I mean, it's a hard battle for sure, but I find that just having an upfront conversation is what has worked best for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Carter, you've got your hand up. Pose your question, please.
I'm glad I was figuring out how to raise my hand. Jennifer, thank you so much. Those were some great ideas. I've been using Flipgrid too, and I just started recently. And you said that they can respond to each other. Have you figured out a way that they can respond to each other and then see it? Because I've only been able to find, and maybe it's because I'm doing the free version, where they can just respond. My daughter's right here too, where they can only respond directly to each other.
I haven't actually. One of my students suggested, because the Google Classroom questions were going well, why don't we try commenting on the videos? So I'm giving that as a homework tomorrow and seeing if they can figure it out. And if they can't, then, you know, all of this remote learning stuff, I feel like is trial and error, and we're all kind of like doing our best. But I can definitely get back to you with that answer once I've tried it out.
Thank you. That's all. Yeah, because I can see where they can do it directly to each other, but I can't.
And Kathleen, it sounds like you've got a partial answer to that. Would you like to, I notice your chat, would you like to jump in and explain? I'm going to unmute you, Kathleen. There you go.
Thank you. I've been playing with parlayideas.com, which is I use in tandem with Google Meets, and it's good for written work and making people or making your students comment between all of their ad-libbing. So if you guys want to go there, it's actually free right now.
Excellent. Peely, you have your hand up.
Yes, I mean, mine is more like, how frequent are you meeting with your students? Like right now, I don't have a scheduled time with my students. I just assign things on Google Classroom and things like that, but we don't have a scheduled meeting with them. And that has been like a struggle. Also, like in my assignments, I may have like probably like 70% participation. So I don't know if in your case, like you have more students and how like you can bring them or engage them a little bit more.
Yeah, so in my school, we're meeting 4 days a week for 20 minutes every time. So I see my students pretty often, but some of these digital platforms are things that you can do live or on your own. So I would suggest, you know, researching which are of the ones that you can use, maybe like
Thank you very much. Erica, I think we have just enough time for your question.
It's actually not a question. We've been using Flipgrid for a while in our school, and one of the things that you can do when you set it up is you can determine how the students can communicate back and forth with each other. If they can give likes, if they cannot give likes, if they can give stickers and emojis. But one of the ways that they can come back to each other, they actually can't write back to each other. They can video back to each other. And you have to go onto it and open student-to-student replies. And it allows the students to reply to each other via video for another student. So if like I posted a video, one of you can go on and reply via video. You can't do it in writing, but kids have figured out how to show just their screen with typing and not actually video. So that's what you have to make sure you toggle over. Otherwise, it won't let them.
And Erica, are we as the teacher able to see those comments also?
Yes, you can see every video on Flipgrid. There's nothing that they're able to hide. You can hide things from them on Flipgrid. Like if you put up a topic you don't want them to have access to, you can make it inactive for a while and then only activate it. Like if your class is at 9, but you made it at 6, you can keep it locked until then, and then you just open it up again.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And with that, let's turn to our second presenter. Chris Barley teaches at Essex Street Academy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, bienvenidos a todos. I'm going to also share my screen. And can everyone, let's see, it looks like it's doing, can everyone see We're good. Okay, great.
Yep.
So as Renee said, thank you for the introduction. My name is Chris Barley. I'm a Spanish teacher at Essex Street Academy in the Lower East Side. We're a small high school of about 350 students. I teach Spanish 1 and 2, and my contact information is here. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have. So I'm going to talk about 3 things that are working for me today. The first is Instagram. And I really believe that for me, Instagram has been a social network that has been an antidote to social distancing. I'm going to talk a little bit about an authentic assignment that I gave to my students last week. And then lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I take care of myself by staying connected with other Spanish teachers. So here it is, Essex Street Chris. A few months ago, I set up a class Instagram account. Just as a little extra thing to do for my students, where I would put on different polls, I would create stories, I would put up some pictures and so forth. And at times in class, I would ask students to take out their phones and go to my Instagram account, Essex Street Chris, and look at the story or answer some questions. On March 16th, the first day that we were out of school, and the chancellor and the mayor said schools are closed, I really thought, wow, this week, I'm already missing, I'm already behind, there's so much uncertainty. Why don't I really activate my Instagram account so I can really sort of make concrete those personal connections that I have with my students? So I got on a really great rhythm and routine, and that week I started posting a lot. It really helped, like I said, with personal connections. It helped instill a sense of normalcy in terms of not being in the classroom anymore. I was putting up lots of comprehensible input in Spanish, using authentic language. I think one of the big challenges that we're all facing right now is how do we really connect with students? And I think the way to do that is to actually think like them. They use, as I'm sure we do as well, Instagram and other types of social media. It's a really great way to engage the unengaged. And I put up a lot of content that's pretty light to help create a sense of just sort of fun at this time. So the power of story. I use the story function a lot. And I like this quote by Jonathan Gottschall, which states, "We are, as a species, addicted to story. Even when the body goes to sleep, the mind stays up all night, telling itself stories." So what do my stories look like? So I always start with the date. And here, as you can see, my hair was cut a little bit better at that point. And then I often give opportunities for students to write in like how they're doing. ¿Cómo te sientes hoy? Just like we did in school, I always ask a question of the day or an essential question, and I put it up in English as well to create multiple entry points for students. So as you can see, this was the 16th of March. The essential question is, what are you going to do today? I put up a few stories. For example, I'm going to drink tea, and then I'm going to check my email. And then I simply ask students to identify what I was doing. So there's lots of visual and lots of interaction. Another example, I wanted to teach the verbs for to miss. I taught extrañar and echar de menos. I then, for example, in the middle, put up a picture of when we were in school, asking students if they missed Spanish class. As you can see, 77% did. And then as sort of as an exit ticket, I put up, what are simply 3 new words that you learned today? Another example with stories, I was talking about pets. And I remembered in Japan, there are animal hair salons, which are super, super fun. So I had so much fun with this actual story where I put up before pictures of dogs and after pictures. And again, it was something that was creating this sense of levity and a sense of, we can all laugh and smile through these Instagram stories and learn Spanish. I'm also really obsessed with travel, geography, and it's an important thing, I believe, for our students to gain a sense of geographic awareness. So I was doing, I did one story where I was taking images from, and often in many cases, the Spanish-speaking countries, in other cases, countries that I visited, like Italy in the middle, putting up an image, putting up the flag, and asking students to identify that country. Also, we were hearing a lot about the coronavirus responses in countries that had female leaders. Those countries doing really, really well. So I incorporated some current events where I included countries like New Zealand and Germany with flags, and I did a little series on leaders from those countries. So a few tips with Instagram. Setting up your phone settings in Spanish can help quite a bit. Also, I use Bitmojis a lot, as you see. Putting those in Spanish is also another great way to create a personal connection with students. I use a lot of screenshots for my stories. I also use pictures from my camera. When I was pining for the days when I was traveling more freely, I started going through vacation pictures and using those. Direct message your students. I have one student who does not respond to email, who does not respond to phone calls, but responds to direct messages on Instagram. So it can really help engaging the unengaged. Also, in the first few weeks, I posted instructions for work. My school is working on an asynchronous model, so we have little to no FaceTime with students. Students had a lot of questions about Google Classrooms, so I simply took my iPhone and held it up to my computer and said, for activity 1, this is what you do, and walk them through it. I sometimes ask students to post content in Spanish, and then I'll repost it, which is a really great way to learn from your students. A few concerns: to follow or not follow your students. That's a question. I do not follow them, but I do follow other friends, and some family members have started following me on this account, so I follow those people. Of course, access to technology is an issue. Certainly keep your own personal page private. And then, because Instagram is so clever, you'll start getting weird friend requests on your probably personal account. So you just got to go with that and roll with those punches, so to speak. One other thing that I want to point out quickly, I won't go through this too long. I'll just take about a minute more or so. Shifting gears a little bit, my French colleague and I, the French teacher at my school, Stacy, and I created an activity where we did a thanks to all the essential workers project. So all of this is in the shared folder. You can access it. Feel free to take it. At first, we did an image analysis, and then students looked at the images. We taught some basic vocabulary for, looks like we're being paused. Okay, looks like we're back in business. Some basic vocab for different professions, and then a simple exercise on how to say thank you to different groups of workers. Thank you for certain things like your courage, your help, your work, and your care. We then put those together, and we created our own videos and papers or posters where we thanked essential workers for their hard work. We had students do this in a Google Classroom and upload them. Here are 2 examples. And we're putting them together and sending them to essential workers in our school community. The last thing that I want to mention is, how do I stay connected as a Spanish teacher? Twitter has been incredibly powerful. I would highly recommend these 2 hashtag searches, LangChat and COVID-19 WL. And as you can see, there's a list of people who I follow. Someone in our group today, Lori, who you'll hear from next, has a great Twitter account, and I've gotten lots of ideas from there. So thank you all so much. Muchas gracias. Renee, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm just talking to myself here. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Chris. We have a few minutes for questions, so please go ahead and raise your hands. Julia, please.
Hi. So, Chris, I'm wondering if, I think it sounds like the answer is yes, but I'm wondering if you had started doing some work on Instagram with your students before you moved to remote learning, because I'm thinking about like norm setting, and I would imagine that you had conversations with them, and I don't know, just like maybe you could share like what those conversations were like, because that those kind of like community standards can be a little bit harder to convey when you're not in person.
That's a great question. Thank you for that, Julia. You're right. I did start it at the beginning of this academic year. One thing that I will say is clearly, there were the norms around being respectful, using appropriate language, and so forth. I use the story function a lot more than I actually post pictures that will appear in a student's feed, because the stories are really only between my students and myself. So if a student, for example, would write something that would not be appropriate, for example, it would only come to me. Also, I save the stories. So if you do check out my Instagram, you'll be able to see all of the archived stories. And sometimes I'll ask students to interact with them. Go back to the story from March 3rd, and that will help you build a little knowledge around the vocab that we're working on this week. One thing I would say is if you're using some sort of asynchronous learning, you can always ask students like in a note to join if they'd like. I don't make any of this required. I really make it work that is just a little additional in terms of getting some more input from me. But right, norm setting we did. And I would say if there are issues, if you have concerns about that, maybe think more about using the story than the actual posts of pictures.
Thank you. And with that, I'm afraid we need to move on to our third presenter. Lori Langer de Ramirez is, thank you, teaches at the Dalton School. Lori, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's really difficult to follow Jennifer and Chris with all of these amazing ideas. I'm going to do my best to share some other tools that I kind of love. And we're going to start by using a Pear Deck. So essentially what I'm going to do, first I'll share my screen with you all. And then if you are able, and this is optional, if you would like to open up a screen off to the side, you can actually do some of the activities I'm about to share with you, you can do them along with us. And this is something a model for you that I use with my kids. The Pear Deck is an add-on to Google Docs. So if you want to, you open up a Google, whatever your browser is, and go to joinpd.com. You type in that code. For those of you who don't want to do it, no worries. You can just follow along with my shared screen. But you can see I'm waiting for students. I've already got some, yay. Pear Deck is absolutely fantastic. It's my new kind of, the thing I'm most in love with right now. And I did start using it after remote learning. I didn't use it before, wasn't aware of it, but got introduced to it by a colleague, and I think it's fantastic. So I'll just wait another second if anyone wants to join. But I can start the class straight away. So the great thing about Pear Deck is that you can actually have, rather than sharing your screen out, you can have kids just looking at that screen. So it's a really nice way to get their attention. So today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite things, as the song goes. Pear Deck, Classkick, Google Docs, Extempore, or extempore, depending on how you like to pronounce that. And then I also developed 2 thematic units for remote learning specifically, 2 topics that are near and dear to my heart, one about the capybara that Renee loves, knows I'm absolutely obsessed with. And then the other is about the Museo del Oro, which is my background here today. So I'll talk a little bit about all of those things. Okay. First and foremost, Pear Deck is this great add-on to Google Slides, and it's interactive. So right now on your screens, if you're logged in, you can tell me what you think are your most pressing needs. It's a great way to tap into kids, to get them responding, to take polls. So you drag and drop. I'm getting lots of responses. I should be, can you see the responses? Can everyone see the way people are responding, or is that, I think sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't, but I can see it from my end. People are moving their dots every old way. So it looks like lots of interest in culture, in speaking and writing. Actually, you're all interested in all of it, as am I. So this is a great way to assess how kids are feeling. Pear Deck has a lot of slides, templates that you can use. Some of them are in Spanish, but they're not really great. So here's one, for example, where it's got some English, it's got these weird images. It's a very, very simple slide, and there's also no culture. So very simple way of changing that. Same template, You don't have to do a lot of work. But I do a unit with my students on the cuy. There's a Festival del Cuy in parts of Peru where folks dress up their very favorite guinea pigs, and there's a contest. So it's a fantastic way to do clothing, a little bit of culture in there. And so if you would like to do this one, you would go ahead and circle the answer. So el cuy lleva una falda negra, and then I've got some answers. Yes, you all chose correctly, so fantastic. So quick way of taking a template that is simple and easy, and it's very, very easy to edit. Another template that comes from Pear Deck, also similarly, incredibly boring. I don't love the English. My philosophy is there's no reason to ever teach colors on their own. There's always something to connect to it, especially a cultural connection. I love folk art, and so I always use the mola, which is a craft from Latin America, specifically from the Cuna Islands in Panama and also parts of Colombia. And so this is a matching. So I can see, folks, you take your little dot and you move it over to any place on the mola that you think represents that color. So this is a great way of going very quickly. This is for, novice, low, novice, mid kids who are really just beginning to learn colors, but it's a very simple and interactive way of doing it. And it's great for your synchronous classes. So what do we think? Pear Deck, true, false, looks awesome. Everyone says true, fantastic. That was set up, I knew you'd love it. So the rest of this presentation is in Pear Deck, and you'll see a few more slides to give you a sense for what it can do. Another tool I love and just discovered after going remote was Classkick. Classkick is great. I know somebody earlier in this session, we were talking about what to do with kids synchronously, kind of how to get them interacting. Classkick is great because you develop a series of slides and tasks, and you as the teacher have this board. You can watch where kids are. If you notice, this was the practice run that I did with my colleagues. So Carlos and I are doing great. We're on slide number 7. But Mike's not doing so great. And so you can come in real time and help him out and see where he's stopped. You'll notice also that I raised my hand on this slide. That means it's a signal to the teacher that I need some help. And so you can go in and give comments and kind of direct the student in real time. This is a tool that can be used synchronously or asynchronously. So you can really use it for different purposes. And there's stickers as well. And if you're like me, I love some stickers. This is an example of a colleague of mine developed for elementary level learners. There's also a microphone function here. So students can record their answers based on a prompt. So again, it comes with templates. You can edit things and make them your own, but it's a really, really useful tool. So Classkick can help you do the following. And for this one, you would drag your little, ficha on the bottom to wherever you think it should go. So what do you think? It can monitor in real time. You can check kids' progress. You can provide feedback, give stickers. Excellent. People are dragging their things around. Perfect. Okay, going quickly. I also, as my colleagues, I love Google Docs. I love Pinterest. If anyone's on Pinterest, follow my boards. I have tons of them, and I'll follow yours. It's an incredible resource and a great way to put things together in a place where you can find them later. I have a board that I use for speaking and writing prompts. Right now in remote learning, I'm really using them for writing prompts. And so my students each have a folder and they have a document. Every day I pick a prompt, an image that's usually funny or weird. I'm teaching 6th grade right now, so we tend towards the weird. And then they have to write on it. This is an example. They're allowed to ask me for up to 3 words. The class has to decide and agree on those 3 words. I give them to them. And then the students will write. We do this every day. I pick 2 or 3 kids to share their writing. And then at the end of the quarter, you could do it at the end of the month. You collect a certain number. It could be 4 of their favorites. It could be 10 of their favorites, however many you did. And then I give them some feedback. They edit those back and forth, and then I have a very, very simple rubric and give them and assess a grade if you have a grade for the kids. The kids really enjoy this activity and find that it helps their writing. They just do a lot of writing, and it's messy and they make mistakes, but it's a great way to leverage all those kind of fun images you get online. I'm going to zip past this because I see I'm running past time. Extempore is a great tool for assessing speaking. It is free right now, although it is a subscription service. I think later on, hopefully they'll keep it free for a while. You can put out a prompt with text, with image. You can do a video, you can do audio, and the kids respond on video. What I like about Extempore is you can watch the kid as they speak. This one I'm not able to show you, but maybe later if we have time. You can tell he's speaking off the cuff. You can tell it's impromptu. A lot of my other kids, you can see them kind of reading the line that they pasted behind the camera. So this is a great way, we were talking earlier, of making sure that kids are using their own language. You can kind of watch as they go through it. Okay, super fast. I know Renee's getting ready to cut me off. Okay, I developed two thematic units that for this time, these are two topics that I love, that I've been waiting to have the time to develop. One is, as I said, the Museo del Oro. I have one called La Capibara Contenta. For the capybara, I have countless images of capybaras doing amazing and cute things. So lots of good review of vocab here. This is a completely digital unit, so the kids will download a packet that they can use at home for writing, but most of the materials live online, and you have in the folder, like my colleagues and presenters before me, materials are there for you to download and to use. The Museo del Oro similarly takes them through a virtual trip to Bogota to visit the Laguna de Guatavita. They study the legend, they go to the museum, they pick out images, and it ends in an escape room type activity that one of my students helped me develop. So they have to determine who stole the artifact from the Museo del Oro. It's all interactive, and the kids have a really good time with it. All right, Renee, I think I did it.
Fantastic. Excellent. I think we have time for one question. If somebody would like to pose one question, that's a lot of pressure, I know, for everybody.
That's the one.
All right, Sylvia.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry.
Nope, you were good. Do it again.
Can you just explain the, thank you. Can you just explain the difference between how, I think it's extempore and Flipgrid? Like why would you use that? Well, not why would you use that, but what are the benefits of using that over Flipgrid?
Yep, that's a great question. So extempore has the ability to time exposure to the prompt. And I know in our school, we're not doing timed assessments, but in many schools, that's a big concern. How do you assess students so that we can generate a grade? So extempore, you can time, much like the AP will give a prompt, and then you have a certain amount of time having heard it to respond. Extempore has a whole ton of settings. You can make it timed, you can make it untimed, but it's a really good way of assessing students and limiting both the amount of time exposure to the prompt and the amount of time that they get to respond. So again, some of the concerns are about kids having unlimited, unfettered access to the internet. They're able to look things up. This would mitigate that challenge just a little bit.
Excellent. And Megan asks if you can embed videos into Pear Deck.
So that's a super good question. And yes, you can, but for some reason when you present, or when I presented just now, I wasn't able to play that, that video because it was embedded. So I think I'm doing something wrong. So I think the answer is yes, but I don't know exactly how, and I will find out.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you to our three presenters.